All right. Welcome to another episode of the Apocalypse Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Taylor, and this is my brother, Kyle.
Yup.
All right. Welcome, and we are talking about the movie Civil War, written and directed by Alex Garland. I am curious what your thoughts are, but I want to open. I don't want you to say anything. We're going to just say the number that you would give it on your review
Out of
scale.
what?
So for me,
5 out of 5, yeah.
okay, if we're gonna do, I'm gonna do it out of 5. I was thinking about it. I've been waffling between 2. It's gone up, it's gone down. I think I'm gonna end up giving it a 4 out of 5 at the end of it.
Same.
Okay, cool. Because
Yup.
I originally was a 3.5, and then it was a 4.5, and then I was like, you know what? I think it's, if I were to put it in his like a tier list, like S tier is Ex Machina Annihilation, and this is just like A plus. Like it doesn't have quite the special sauce that I think like puts it way up there with his best, but I still think it was like really, really strong.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where at the end of it, I felt the same way. I was like, my gut maybe was that it was a like 3.5 out of 5 initially, and then the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't really have that much bad to say about it. I was entertained. There was a lot of tense moments. It was very well filmed. Like, I liked the characters. I thought it was well written. I was like, I guess pure quality and entertainment value, I guess it is like a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
It sounds high, but I don't, maybe a 7. Jesus Christ, keeps swapping between. I hate that.
I know. Sorry.
So yeah, like, maybe I'm for some reason in my head a 3.5 out of 5 or 7 out of 10 is kind of low, but it's really not. That's like a very solid movie is 7 out of 10. So maybe Civil War should be that, but that's not what I gave it. So whatever.
So the reason at first it was interesting going into this movie is the context surrounding it a little bit of, it's called Civil War, and it's not really, people said it wasn't very political, right?
Yeah.
I have a very strong disagree with that. I feel like this is just very clearly an anti-war movie. That's the like vibe I'm getting from it, and like it feels like it is saying something, but it isn't saying anything about like, oh, the right is crazy or the left is crazy. Like the movie even presents that you don't know what side believes what, except that the president is kind of a psychopath, right? Like the idea that clearly there's a fascist in power. Like he dismantles the FBI, is killing American citizens, like the press. And it's one other third thing is like very clear, like this dude, I mean, he's there for a third term. So I feel like that's what the movie to me is like. It feels like an anti-war movie. They're showing like American military dudes like blowing up monuments in the end. Like to me, it feels like you're supposed to see this stuff and feel like gross about it. I have a lot more specifics after, but I want to hear your thought.
Is that specifically anti-war?
So the way I'm,
what do you think it? Because I see this is why I will admit I had apprehensions about talking about this movie, because for some reason I just can't articulate how I feel about any of it, because it's clearly trying to say something, but I'm stupid, and like I don't, you know, this is just like a journalist movie, and it talks about, you know, the how people get desensitized to war, and is it actually ethical to report horrific things but not do anything about it? Is it okay if it's your profession as a journalist to be a bystander and not try to help? Does that make it okay? Is it still wrong? Like, I have a lot of those kind of thoughts while watching it, which I think is more the primary arc of the movie. But when it comes to what it's trying to say politically, what it's trying to say about war, what it's trying to say about government, like, I don't know.
All right, so like,
is it anti-government? I don't know.
It is kind of a buckshot approach. I do think it's trying to say a lot without saying a lot. Like it's trying to say not that much about a lot of things. It's kind of general, like, hey, boiling points, look how far it can go. You know, I'm going to talk about specifics in the movie that I thought were what I would call like a lot of these just like moments that sit with you, and like how you feel about it is up to you. I think the director wants you to feel something here, but they're not going to tell you what you're supposed to feel. So something I find very interesting is that journalists take what is supposed to be a unbiased look at a scenario, right? They're just there, they're just taking photos.
Yeah, they're
and that's who our heroes are. It is all from the perspective of these people who are just there to document. And I just think that's not a coincidence that and you never hear about like the two sides. Like, I don't know what either team represents, who is in power, what their political ideologies are. So it's like that's not what the movie is even wanting to comment on. Is like, it's like extremism is bad, is kind of like, to me, like something that's obviously unitable, right? Like, you don't need to discuss about like, oh, someone who wants to take over the whole country seems like that would be a bad guy. But for some reason that has divided this nation, and like that being kind of absurd to think about. And so they're just trying to report. I feel like it's kind of hard to articulate this stuff without naming specifics. So I kind of want to go through the movie, because what I think is interesting is how the story unfolds. Is that it kind of is like a road trip movie, that you see how this alternate present has torn this country apart, which I think is really cool. I love that you're taking the lens of these journalists who are going places and kind of risking their lives to be in these scenarios. And you kind of see how different parts of the world are reacting to it. And I remember pausing really early in the movie and recognizing, like, I had a question about the in-universe logic, and they immediately addressed it, and I was like, okay, I'm in good hands here. This is being written by a guy who knows how to write grounded stories and characters that, like, make sense. Is like, for me, is the premise of the movie is Kirsten Dunst is a war photographer. Her name's Lee. I guess her co-worker's name is Joe, though I don't know the actor's name.
Joel.
Oh, it was Joel with an L. Whoops.
I have the wiki open. I don't actually know this guy's name. His name is Wagner Moura, but I know him most famously for portraying Jesus Christ in Narcos. He was the main.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's
what is that? Oh my god, I'm so dumb and stupid. What the fuck is his name?
Joe Biden?
Pablo Escobar?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yes. One and the same, Joe Biden. So yeah, he played Pablo Escobar, and he was unbelievably good. And I had not really seen. I don't think America was really introduced to this guy before he was cast as Pablo Escobar in Narcos, and he just absolutely owned the role. He was so good, and now he's doing fully American stuff.
That's how it goes, man.
That's Joel.
Okay, so that makes sense why I recognized him, but not super familiarly.
Yeah,
but. I think this movie, so like the movie kind of opens up with what seems to be a protest about like citizens feeling that they're not getting enough water in this military zone, and Lee is just out there taking photos, and there's a young girl that kind of looks a lot like Lee, who's also there, and they're kind of having a back and forth about it being dangerous. It's not that important, but what I love about this movie is just like when they're in these battle zones, when these scenes start to escalate. Just like it feels like a war movie in those moments. Like it kind of feels different. The vibe is like a lot more of a Black Hawk Down kind of, with the high energy camera shots, and it's very frenetic and fast, and like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like a drama anymore the way that it has up to that point.
No, it certainly has the excitement and the thrilling nature of a war movie. There's straight up kind of war. It's called Civil War. There is war scenes. It's a weird hybrid of like a road trip movie, war movie.
Yeah, and
it's really cool. But we're not following any soldiers or anyone who's shooting guns. We're following people who are documenting the whole thing. It's a cool spin. Just which of course, because we're getting ahead of ourselves, you started to explain the premise and then we got sidetracked. I'm gonna explain the premise. It's called Civil War. There is a president of the United States who is has like seceded, and he is claiming a third term in office, obviously breaking the law and trying to claim a third term in office. So the United States has splintered. There is the Western Forces, which is a combination of Texas and California, which is, an easy way to be like, instead of, oh, this is a movie about Democrats versus Republicans, it's like, no, what if we took the two biggest Democrat and Republican states and made them on the same team? So immediately you kind of don't, it's not going to make that kind of political statement.
It's not about like the actual
pretty clever way to get around that.
And not an actual ideology. Like it's more about
it's not about it. This feels like an alternate universe United States, not like where the U.S. could be headed. So, anyways, the Western forces, Texas and California, probably comprises of other states too, but they don't really specify.
Florida seems to be the other state they reference, like that it does like
helping out.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem.
So, anyways, the U.S. has splintered. There's some states, the Western forces, that are trying to take back basically the Oval Office, kill the president who's trying to claim this third term, and kind of, I guess, return the United States to what it was.
Yeah.
Or maybe continue in their own way and create some kind of new government. I don't really know. You don't find out in the movie what the end goal is, but you just know that it's a civil war and they're trying to kill the president because he's trying to claim a third term.
Yeah. And
then we follow journalists. We're following journalists who are trying to interview the president. That's their goal. So they're basically, that's why it's a road trip movie. They're kind of traveling across the country to where the president is. They're trying to get an interview with him, an exclusive that no one else has really gotten. And that's the characters we're following.
Yeah, and what I do love about this movie is the way they introduce the context of what the Civil War has done to the country. There's never like this flat out news reporter explaining. It's just like these kind of vague sense. And like what I really loved was this unease, like why I felt like it was kind of like an anti-war movie, was like how awful and just like constant warfare around them kind of sounds, and what that does. Like the shots of like New York City completely abandoned, like to the streets, there's no cars and stuff, and like those are the prices of war. And like seeing that on your own, on our icons instead of some foreign land, I don't know, that kind of unease I felt was like why I felt like it was kind of like this, that war is really bad. I know it's kind of like an obvious thing to say, wow, so profound, but using our landscapes and it being done by our people. It isn't a monster, it isn't Mother Nature. It is human beings that are causing the destruction of our landmarks. And it's not like a big bomb that's one person hit a bomb, boom, it's all destroyed. It's like this slow, intentional firefight picking at that's a little bit.
It's a very, very much a non-escalated. I mean, obviously it's escalated, but not to the point of nuclear war. No big bombs are being shot at ourselves trying to take out the other side. It's just good old-fashioned boots on the ground warfare.
But so then the movie kind of opens at this, like I said, there was this protest in New York where the police have like the water that they're rationing out, and the civilians getting kind of riled up because they're upset they're not getting enough. And they have this really cool shot of the two characters talking, and you see this person with an American flag kind of run by, and you're like, huh, what is that? And then it just boom, suicide bomber, and it is just so like unromantic. It is all of a sudden you hear this explosion, and then like it just kind of cuts away to like the aftermath of all these dead bodies, and like showing the Lee and those other war photographers having to like photograph the aftermath, all the blood on the ground, and like it's awful. It's really ugly.
Yeah.
And they kind of early on make it very clear that Lee is haunted by all of these types of photography she's had to do. And
she's a very, very hard and cold character, but at the same time, she definitely suffers from PTSD. She has these moments where like her vision kind of starts to get blurry and it gets fish-eyed and weird, and you can tell that she's having mental distress about this, but at the same time, yeah, she's become extremely calloused and jaded, and
I was really blown away that
seem to have many emotions.
That it's somehow able to write her in a way that she doesn't feel like cliche hardened, and she still felt likable. Like you could see someone being that way, but you could have a conversation with them and not like be like, why would
She was authentic, very authentic.
and
That's just the power of Kirsten Dunst.
yeah,
And
I
of
just
course,
really want to.
She's written well, but Kirsten Dunst is just so good.
Yeah, she's really good in this movie, and I only really have one moment in the whole movie in which like I didn't understand, and I want to pick at it towards the end, and like
Before. Oh, okay. I thought you were going to do it now at the end. Anyway, I do one comment I want to make though is I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the opening in this with the suicide bombing girl is so similar to the opening of Children of Men. That movie.
yeah, that's
The opening with the suicide bombing in the middle of a group of civilians in a really unexpected place, and then like hard cut to the title, which this movie didn't do, but that whole concept is, that's kind of how The Last of Us, the game, opened. Was the same way. The super impactful, crazy moment, and then it like hard cuts to the title.
classic.
So yeah, this is the opening is very, very Children of Men-esque. Which is one of the best movies ever made as well.
Yeah,
We'll talk about that at some point.
I need to watch it for a third time because the first time I didn't get it. The second time I was like, "Oh, this movie rules," but it's been long enough that I don't remember it. Anyway, not about Children of Men, but about Civil War, and like
No.
so, that they go from this, they rest for the night, and they show kind of like a hotel, like just how living in this town works. They talk about how like power goes on and off all the time. Wi-Fi is not great. So it's just like this general, like if I lived there, I wouldn't know how safe or how long this sense of like this building's going to even be standing. Like there's no clear sense of how safe these people feel.
The country is definitely approaching like dystopia.
Yeah. I think that's just,
Or maybe that's the wrong word, because dystopia is the opposite of utopia, which implies like futuristic perfect conditions.
we
which
are on
this
the
country
edge of the
doesn't have.
apocalypse, of the like
Yeah, I guess it's
the moment that people would point to as the moment where the society collapsed and why we all live in ruins now. Like this movie is the eve of that event. It kind of feels like it's building up to it, and like after the events of the movie, like you kind of don't know which way the country's gonna go. But I do kind of don't want to like necessarily do beat by beat. This movie's actually kind of easy to talk about because there's like 5 or 6 stops on the road that are the clear moments.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the moment is when they go and decide to get some gas, where I really was like, the movie sold me.
Yeah.
Was one, I was like, it's weird. They mentioned it's about 1,000 miles to get to DC because they kind of just dropped the line that like, oh, the interstates are gone. Like you can't use the interstate.
So before this,
Oh, go ahead.
I do want to set up again like the actual structure of the movie, because we're kind of skipping over that. There's basically 4 main characters. There's Kirsten Dunst, who is this hardened. She's also like nationally or maybe even internationally renowned war photographer and journalist. Everybody knows her. They know her work. The movie kind of opens with Kirsten Dunst at this place, and this other younger aspiring photojournalist played by Kaylee Spaney, who was also in Alien Romulus. She's great too. She is an aspiring photojournalist who kind of shows her admiration for Kirsten Dunst, and Kirsten Dunst is pretty cold and doesn't return much to Kaylee Spaney. She's like, you're the reason I'm trying to do this, and she's like, okay. So we're introduced to Kirsten Dunst, this world-renowned photojournalist. She has her kind of partner, it seems, not like relationship-wise, but photojournalist partner, played by the his name is Joel, played by the Narcos guy. Then we have, I don't know who this guy. His name is Sammy, but who is he?
He just also is in.
He kind of seems like in charge of them. They like talk to him and try to
I can
consult
tell
him
you,
and get permission.
It is just another guy who works for another news outlet that's just like kind of co-workers in the field. Like they know each other through the line of work, but they don't work at the same outlets. So like they both be chasing the story, but Sam.
So it's these 3 veteran photojournalists, and then Kaylee Spaney, this young aspiring photojournalist who kind of like worms her way into the group. Kirsten Dunst is the super cold, jaded one. Joel is he's a lot more human and smiley and nice, and he's got a bit more optimism for the world. He might have an alcohol problem, which is probably maybe what contributes to him being able to, like, I don't know, feel happier because he just feels less. Whereas Kirsten Dunst kind of owns and eats and swallows everything she's ever done and felt and seen. And then Sammy, the third guy, he's just kind of a normal dude. And Joel, the happier one, is the one who allows Kaylee Spaney's character to come with them. Kirsten Dunst basically rejects Kaylee Spaney. She kind of asks or implies that she's like, hey, can I come with you? That'd be great. And Kirsten Dunst basically tells her no. And then next thing they know, they're in the car together, and Kaylee Spaney's character, like, shows up and jumps in the car, and Kirsten Dunst is like, Joel, what the fuck? And Joel's like, hey, you know, she reminds me of you when you were younger. You would have liked this opportunity. Let's just do it. So that's the group of four. It's these three veterans and then this newbie who worms her way in.
So while they're on the road and they are passing a gas station and they make a comment about...
Yes.
Because I was just thinking, like, they're driving very far. Wouldn't gas in this kind of, like, pre-apocalypse be kind of tough to get by? And they even make a comment of,
certain
you know, they have that discussion, should we stop for gas? Sam makes this comment of being like, look, if you have the opportunity, you should take it. Implying that, like, it's out there, it's not often, so you should better be safe than sorry. And I found this sequence is a really good mood setter about this movie. Is just about this tension of trying to figure out how to communicate to people and, like, trusting. And it's
especially in a civil war in the modern times where you're not wearing a blue or a gray outfit to signify who you are. In this world, it's kind of like everyone is just kind of dressed like militia. You don't know who is who. And yeah, they approach this gas station and it's full of, you know, it's got 3 or 4 just dudes with beards and hats on, and they got, you know,
very scary guns,
assault rifles and shit. And yeah, they're just kind of standing around and they're approaching, and it's like, we don't know how these guys are going to react to anything. Let's just hope it's okay.
I think
so. Yeah.
They also imply that the American dollar is worth nothing and the Canadian dollar is worth a shit ton, which I thought was just a funny thing. But what I really wanted to highlight was that while the, like, adults are getting gas, Jessie is the name of the Spaney, her character's name, Jessie. I'm going to refer by the character names because I am going to keep butchering everyone's name.
Okay.
She goes around back, and one of the militia dudes kind of follows with, and it kind of shows that they caught 2 looters, which I think were supposed to be soldiers at some point. I don't know. It's not clear. They're hanging up by their wrists.
You don't know if they're even looters.
Right. That's just what the dude said they were. And they're beaten to a pulp. Yeah. They're just dripping in blood. Their faces are kind of bashed.
Been out there for multiple days is what this gas station, one of the gas station owners implies, that they've been beating them for information for days.
And he makes some, like, flippant remark to Jesse. He's like, oh, I want you to decide. Should we kill him now, or should I, like, torture him a little bit before deciding what to do? And she doesn't really say anything. And also, the big point that really unsettles me in this movie that I think is its kind of anti-war thing is that the guy makes a statement like, oh, yeah, I knew them in high school. Like, we didn't really talk to each other, but I know these guys. This idea that he knew these people, and this is what he's doing to his neighbor. That these aren't, like, ideologies. It's like you're doing this to your neighbor. You knew this guy, and, like, that was a really. Yeah. And then that's when Lee comes around the corner and kind of, like, just make sure that Jesse's okay. Kind of diffuses it a little bit and makes the guy. He's like, "Oh, hey, stand between them. I want to take your picture." And that military guy kind of looking a little uncomfortable as he stands there. It's kind of like this, you know. I want you to, like, be proud of this. Like, I don't know. He was, like, really uncomfortable by it and, like, having to face and be proud of what he's doing. Like, I don't know, confronting what you're actually doing and, like, being recorded in that moment was, like, really tough for that character to process. And, like,
interesting. I didn't interpret it like that at all. I interpreted it as he was more suspicious of Lee and Jesse's intentions, not necessarily what he has done. Because when, you know, so the tensions are rising because, you know, this guy is being, like, pretty disturbing. And Jessie is a total newbie, and she doesn't really know what to do in a situation like this. So Kirsten Dunst comes in, recognizes the tension here, and is like, okay, you know what, like, she's going to diffuse it. She's like, hey, you know what, we're just photojournalists. Why don't you go stand by your work here, and I'll take your picture and document what's happening here. And the guy is giving Kirsten Dunst's character kind of looks. He's kind of side-eyeing her, and to me, I interpreted it as like, what is she actually doing here? Like, because
okay, I could see.
I don't know. He stands in between these two looters who are borderline comatose, hanging by their wrists, and he kind of barely acknowledges that he's standing there. He's mostly looking at Kirsten Dunst and keeps giving her looks. And he lifts up his head at one point, like he is proud, and he starts getting into it. So I think it's just a distrust of these photojournalists before he kind of realizes, like, oh, they maybe they are legit. Okay, yeah, this is what I'm doing.
I hear your interpretation. I say that's boring and too surface level. I like my thought of this kind of tough guy act having to deal with that, but yours is probably more accurate. Once again, my headcanon making the movie better than it is.
It's also the fact that, I mean, you said it yourself, this guy is doing this to his neighbor. He knew these guys in high school, and that's not stopping him from torturing them.
And like that, to me, I know was an intentional line.
He's playing a game. He's like, hey, little girl, should I kill these guys right here, right now in front of you, or torture them more? What do you think? Like, I don't know that this guy cares or has feelings at all or remorse for what he's doing. He's also kind of young-ish.
Yeah, like
so it strikes me as a guy.
He's probably early 20s, like probably roughly the age Jessie's supposed to be. Because like they make a comment that this girl looks like she's a teenager, but she's supposed to be like 23 or something. And I will confirm, she looks like she's an 18-year-old, like for sure.
Very young.
So
short. Being short always helps with looking.
But
young.
like, so that situation ends up kind of being non-confrontational. They get their gas and a couple cans to go, but it's like this kind of like level of the movie, if you will, and like this first kind of
sets the tone for like you just don't know who you're going to come into, what they've been doing, what their intentions are. Even if you're technically on the same side, they can still be doing like heinous, horrible shit and be bad people. You just don't know what anyone is capable of. Is kind of
it's just this
what I feel
general
like that
distrust of your fellow man. And, and then there's I think then it kind of does a lot more character building and stuff like that. And I'm trying to remember like the next 20 or 30 minutes or so, and it does kind of elude me of. They do end up, what I think is interesting, they actually they go through a town that's more or less pretending that the war isn't happening. Like, they're showing these shots of, like, lawn sprinklers going off, and that being kind of, like, weird to them. And I just thought that was funny. It's like,
and, like, so after the gas station, they end up spending the night just kind of in a parking lot or in a park somewhere, and you kind of hear bombs going off in the distance.
Oh, duh, that's a huge sequence.
There's war. And this is sort of the sequence where I think Joel sort of he tries to make Jessie feel more comfortable, because you can tell she's really shook up from what happened, and she was actually, like bawling her eyes out on the car ride, because she's like, I couldn't even take these guys' pictures. Like, I'm getting so emotionally invested in this. She's actually mad at herself for feeling emotions, which kind of, gives you the idea of what these characters do to themselves to become this unbiased documenters. They kind of turn into, I don't know, just stones. They themselves are just cameras. They might as well be. They have no feelings, and they train themselves to not have feelings, and it's kind of disturbing in its own way. So yeah, Joel is kind of trying to comfort Jessie and gets her to try to get some sleep, because, again, he's like, you never know when you can get sleep, so take it when you can get it. And Joel then goes to Kirsten Dunst, who's like sitting in a separate area, and Kirsten is kind of upset about Jessie's emotions as well. Like, see, I told you this girl isn't ready for this stuff. She doesn't know what she's doing. This is like going to be way too overwhelming. And Joel kind of says, again, he's like, she's a lot like you. You weren't the way you are now as you've always been. So, like, give her some time. And then Joel's got a bottle of vodka, and he's like, and I'm going to go, finish this off. And then he walks off by himself. And so they all are they're together, but they're all separate and all processing things vastly differently.
And
So
and I forgot because and what's really interesting about this movie is that they treat their sleep like the movie just like cuts from them basically laying down to being right into the middle of a battlefield. Like it's almost a jump scare with a gun firing, and they're now at the battle still.
Oh, that's the next sequence.
Yeah, like
it's after this discussion, and they're all kind of like starting to settle down for the night. Yeah, it cuts to the next sequence where their helmets on. They got their bulletproof vests on that say "press" on it because apparently I. See, this is why I'm stupid. I didn't really realize. I think that exists in real life. You're not supposed to kill the press and people documenting war. Like, yeah, if they happen to get blown up by a stray mortar or a landmine, like, oops. But you're not supposed to directly kill the press. It's the same thing with medics. Like, that's why they wear the helmets with the crosses. You're not supposed to kill them. But if they die, oh well. It's like a weird handshake rule, you know? Just don't do it if you can help it. Okay.
Yeah, I double checked with Brianna. I was like, this is real, right? This isn't like a fantasy thing. I'm showing how ignorant I am, right? But yes, this is a real thing. But what I really liked was that like the people that they were following were like in Hawaiian shirts. Like it would look like it was just dudes who were on their way to Walmart to pick up the groceries for their wives are now in the middle of this
just
tactical gun
jeans and button-down shirts. Yeah,
and I didn't even realize this, that they end up, I think, following both. No, never mind. Ignore my thought. That was just remembering things incorrectly. But they show a guy who gets like shot basically and wounded and ends up bleeding out like right in front of the journalist. So like Jesse's getting like exposure to like real warfare. It's like her first real battle that they're documenting, and nothing in that goes particularly wrong. Actually, it goes according to plan, but like it was just very intense and stuff. And Joel's like popping off. Like you can tell this is a high. He loves this high of documenting this stuff. That's why he does this shit. And you don't know, is he an alcoholic because he's like suppressing the bad memories, or is he just like a high chaser? It's never really clear, and he's not a bad dude, so you don't really like give him shit for it. But it's interesting to see different ways to process like this traumatic moment, right? Of like facing it and like never forgetting, or smiling and joking through it and drinking through the pain and stuff too. So
I think it helps because he's not a photojournalist. He doesn't have a camera.
You're right.
He's usually he's the one that he interviews people. So that's why he's going on this road trip, because he's going to interview the president, where everyone else are photojournalists that are. Or Sammy isn't a photojournalist, this other guy that we're not really talking about much because he's very heavy. So
I think he does a similar...
He doesn't like go out and run around in battle. He's kind of a heavier guy. He's a real old vet, and he just kind of like doesn't have it in him too much anymore to go do this kind of crazy high-octane shit.
Yeah, that's right. He very much does not take photos. And what I do want to say that is important, they establish, I think, in this battle scene, is there are multiple moments that when the two girls take a photo, the movie actually has a black and white still that's like freeze framing a moment in your mind. So like when you think of this image now, like the way it almost looked like, you know, the guys putting up the flag in Hiroshima, those like historical war photos that are like burned into your memory. They're trying to like recreate that in these battles that they're capturing, and like this is what those people were doing and seeing. I don't know. It's an interesting stylistic choice. They do it in all the battle sequences, and it's very obvious in the finale. They do it a lot.
Yeah, they're like filming, and as you're watching, as an audience member watching the film, the camera kind of like flashes and turns black and white, and it just holds, like the whole screen holds this still image in your head, and then it'll kind of cut back into the actual battle.
What do you think of that as like a person watching this movie? Did you appreciate that? What did you think of it?
Yeah, no, it's super cool. It's just a really easy way to be like, show the audience what photojournalists do. You know, instead of just a constant moving camera watching somebody take pictures, this camera that you're watching as an audience member turns into the camera taking the pictures. Like, this is what they're seeing right there. This is the image they just took. Yeah, it's a very cool stylistic thing that yeah, it just punches you in the face with what photojournalists do and what they see, and
For me,
yeah,
what I
how it
liked,
works. Just like burning, like you said, burning these still images in your head of like that is the moment that they capture and they will stare at and put in a paper and have the rest of the world see as well. Like it just puts us into the first person perspective rather than, like I said earlier, following a soldier around and watching him shoot and kill a guy. It's like we're following these photojournalists around, so we're seeing their version of war, and it was cool to see that translated to the actual cinematography.
yeah, for me, I like to pretend that I sound smarter than I really am is like it slows down a battle, so it is so quick to like, like when the guy was like gushing blood after his wound, they're trying to suture him, and then like they just kind of like move past his death by forcing this image, like the image would take a picture of him bleeding out to death. Like you have to stop and look at someone dying instead of being like you're being overstimulated by all these different like things blowing up.
Yes, yeah.
And now you have to sit
point.
there and be like, oh fuck, that's what's happening right.
Guy,
Like because
is dying right now.
What I'll say is like the violence in this movie isn't like there is a lot of violence, but it is not in like a gory way, and it is very quick, and it like in some ways like I didn't the violence doesn't register in my brain, but I remember them trying to close that wound, and that when they like took a picture of it, that stuck because they slowed down. Because like yeah, you see these Hollywood movies when someone gets shot and you just zoom right past like it. I don't know that like so to me that was the big takeaway from that moment. They follow the soldiers as they try to do the counterattack. They kidnap the three remaining soldiers, put like duffel bags on their head and walk them out to a field, and then they execute them. And the whole time, like this, like hip hop songs playing, and like they're kind of taking photos, and like you can kind of see through Jesse's eyes that this is like really like. She's not handled this. This is going to be something that she'll remember for a long time. It's a very
it's another
sobering
test
moment.
For her. Is like this is just how nonchalant everyone has become about violence. It just okay, we got him surrendered. All right, go shoot him. Go take him out.
They were laughing. It's like people laughing about it. It's like it's really gross.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. It's like it
really
makes
fucking
violence and all of it. It's just like it's really nasty. Not in a fun way, but like I feel like an intentional. Unpleasant way,
it's just super grounded. There's cinematic violence in war movies, right? Like I keep thinking about Saving Private Ryan for this, like the D-Day sequence, of course, is so iconic. But this movie does a cool thing where, as you've been sort of talking about, is that these soldiers that are getting shot and killed in front of you, they are random soldiers. And because they're not the main characters, in a movie like Saving Private Ryan or Black Hawk Down or something, you would just go like, oh shit, that soldier just got shot and died. All right, next scene. Where in this one, it's like, hey, that soldier just got shot and is bleeding out to death. Let's watch him. It's like, it's completely fucked up, and it really kind of throws you off kilter as from what you're used to seeing in a war movie. It's normally, you just follow the main characters. If a soldier dies off screen, you got to go, oh, that sucks, and then you move on. But in this, it's like, these are no-name soldiers. They're only in this scene. They're only in this sequence, but they slow it down enough, and they made the stylistic cinematic choice to really, like, make you, as an audience member, absorb and watch and sit with this guy, this random dude you don't know his name, you were introduced to him 30 seconds ago, and he's dying and bleeding out in front of you, and it's very sobering. It's a lot different than a normal war movie.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll add is like, because they're journalists, there's not a lot of like acts of heroism. That's not very like they're trying to survive. They don't glorify these moments of battle of a guy making the 6th sniper shot. Like it kind of just is not about that, and that's something cool about this. Feels unique about this war movie is it doesn't feel heroic at all. There's no acts of heroism that are exciting or glorified.
You know what? You bring that up. There is one particular act of heroism, and it's
pointless.
It's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not pointless. Maybe we're thinking of two different acts. I'm thinking of one specific.
Oh, never mind. You're yes. Yeah.
A great cost to this act of heroism.
Okay, that
which I'm
one
sure
you're right.
You can.
So, all right. I think so. Then it goes after that. They end up in that town where they just pretend the war isn't happening because they're lucky enough to be away from any of the major hot spots that they can. And it gives a moment to like kind of make Lee a little bit warm and connect with Jesse, and they have a moment together, and you finally get to see like Lee smile for the first time in like 40 minutes of like, I think this movie about halfway through the movie she has not had a moment of joy.
No.
So,
and then Kaylee Spaney, the young kind of happier journalist, brings it out of her by making her try on just like a nice dress because, you know, they're all wearing tactical gear, really casual stuff, jeans and cargo pants and just baggy shirts and like shit that, you know, gets the job done for what they're doing. And they get to this small town and yeah, it's just pristine and it's like a little fairy tale town and all the journalists are looking at each other like, where the fuck are we? How does this place exist in our current like situation? What is going on? They even walk into a store and there's a girl at the counter like on her phone just like, oh hey, welcome in, and like completely not caring about anything that's happening. And it's like a modern day, and the journalists even go up to her and they're like what is going on here? How does this place exist? And she's like, you know what, we just kind of stay out of it. I don't know. We're just
it's crazy
Let
out
everything
there.
else happen around us.
I don't want to get involved.
Yeah. Oh, is that what she said? It's crazy. Out there.
According to the news, it's pretty crazy out there. It's like, that's such a how many times have you hear it? And like, what I think is a really interesting point is like after that they kind of like, you know, roll their eyes. We're like, all right, well, and they do a little shopping, but like right before they leave, Sam and Lee are by the car, and you know, Sam makes an observation, like, oh yeah, don't make a big deal, but look up. And the camera pans up just a tiny bit, and you see two dudes on the roof with what you assume are guns, and it's just like, oh yeah,
assault rifles or snipers or something.
And I think they don't, and then there's no characters say any dialogue, and it kind of just cuts to them driving, and like you sit there with it, and like to me, what it really means is like it's two things, right? Is like you. Even if you ignore it, you're still being impacted by it, or pretending it's not, like a problem doesn't exist doesn't mean, you know, like it's impossible. You can't ignore it, even if it's not physically next to you. Like this is in your space.
Yeah, it's like this town is just under military control, and you know, it reminds me of the Lord of the Rings, how like the Shire and Hobbiton are kind of guarded by.
Oh, yeah.
See, I'm not like a super Lord of the Rings nerd, but I know they're guarded by like people basically like Aragorn, who kind of just, they go way out on the sidelines and they guard this place, and they basically intentionally keep the Shire as this little blissful town living in ignorance to the rest of the world, you know, because even in those movies, Sam is like, this is the farthest I've ever been. And it's, you know, it's like 2 miles out of town through a cornfield. Like they live in their beautiful, pretty little town, but they're actually kind of protected from the dangers of the outside. That's what this town is. Like they're under military guard, they're under military presence, but I don't know, I guess they just want to keep this little town as sort of like a snapshot.
And even
pun not intended, but a snapshot of like the way the world used to be.
Yeah, and I think the movie is letting you, the viewer, kind of interpret: is this good? Is this bad? Is this like, what does that really mean to you?
Which, now that I'm talking about it, it actually doesn't make sense that they would just be able to roll through there.
That's why part of me is like, I don't know.
They definitely should have had to go through like a crazy guarded gate to get access to this beautiful, pretty little town. Because what if they were suicide bombers or violent people who were looking to make trouble? They could just roll in. They could have just walked in that store and shot that girl. Like,
I get what. Yes, but I think the implication is that this is like hundreds of miles away from any major.
That's true. They've been on the road for a while.
Yeah, they're getting
kind of in the middle of nowhere.
So like this feels like the halfway point in the movie. So to me, this is supposed to be like where I live, right? This place in nowhere, Illinois, that like is kind of, I'm allowed to ignore the greater world in a lot of ways because I'm just far enough away while still being protected, but I pretend that like, oh, I'm just staying out of it, when in reality I'm in it. I'm just being protected, and like I get to live my fantasy world when the real life is not as cute. Yeah, it was just an interesting little thing as the as they roll through.
Also, note, we're 40 minutes in and we're not even halfway through the movie, so I think we gotta.
All right, so let's fast forward to. I think it was an interesting. There's a quick like detour. They get to this like a sniper standoff between two guys, and they kind of make this point of being like, Joel is asking them like, who is shooting at you? And they keep saying, that guy is shooting at us. And Joel's like, yeah, but what side? And he insults him, calls him the R word. It's like, dude, I don't know. And like,
the sniper, he's like, dude, are you fucking stupid?
And like, it was very interesting because
we're trying to kill the guy that's trying to kill us.
So then, like, as the last like kind of minute of that scene, Jesse kind of comes out to see, and the sniper or like the military guy asks Jesse, as like, who is up there? And she's like, the sniper, and like kind of this idea of like he's not affiliated with anything in the battle. Like you divorce yourself from that type of like identifier when you're in the actual war. Like that, the ideologies don't mean anything and don't matter anymore. And it's just like kind of a quick little like thing. And it's just like, oh, interesting. And once again, these military dudes, complete fucking assholes. Like the guys that are like you're supposed to be, rooting for, who are trying to take down this tyrannical president, is just such pricks. For no reason.
Yeah. Well, I think that's another. I mean, that's very intentional. Nobody is necessarily likable in this.
Yeah, everyone's flawed. They're all human.
Photojournalists, but they're. Yeah, I mean, they're not trying to. They're not trying to. Like, imagine if these snipers were nice, you would be on their side. Mm-hmm. Immediately, just naturally. Like, oh, these are nice guys trying to protect themselves. But because they're not, you as an audience member go like, okay, yeah, just they're not on a side, and I guess neither am I.
I love it. So I think those are really clever and good.
It's kind of meta. It's cool. Yeah.
So I'll hit the floor towards like what I think are the big ones. The Jesse Plemons, wonderful. Yes, what kind of American are you? Holy shit, that is paced so well. It is they up the tension up until even getting there, because those two other reporters, they sound the road. They kind of set up, be like, uh-oh, are they bad guys? No, they're just goofy morons who are annoying. But
let's hold on. I'm gonna back this up and add some structure here.
Oh, you want a structure
during the sniper battle too? Well, I'm not saying we just like skip over stuff. I'm just like try to be more concise, which is not either of our strong suits. There is a significant line, though, during the sniper fight. So how it works is they approach this road, and they see that there's like a dead body in the road. But it's in this big kind of open field with some crashed cars and shit on either side. And they're like, this looks like a trap or fucked up. We probably should go the other way. And they're like, nah, fuck it. Just go forward. So they go forward. They get shot at. They dive out of the car. They stop and get out of the car. And that's when you find these two dudes laying down on a knoll. And this is where we are introduced to our snipers. But there's a line at this point where Kaylee Spaney, now it's been halfway through the movie, they're all kind of bonding a little bit. Kaylee Spaney, while they're all kind of laying in the grass taking cover, talks to Kirsten Dunst and says, like, if I were to be killed right now, would you take a picture of me? And this forces Kirsten Dunst to again face something that a lot of people probably don't face. And it's like, oh yeah, you're kind of becoming my friend, but if you died, I would have to be this non-biased source that I'm supposed to be as a photojournalist. And like, she kind of takes a second and has to think about it, but then she doesn't even directly say yes. I think what she says is, what do you think?
She does. I was going to tell you, I actually knew that. I was like, this is, I knew that, unfortunately, that she doesn't make it in the end. Yeah, there's spoilers in this movie, or in this review, so I don't feel bad mentioning it. But like hearing that line, I was like, oh, fuck. All right. That's a foreshadow.
One of these two is going to die. Yeah. It's definite foreshadowing.
Everything was foreshadowed well, so that's another great rating.
Yeah. So after the sniper sequence, which, by the way, you never see the other sniper.
Yeah. You see
the scene just like... Yeah, they just keep showing this shot of like a big log cabin ranch style house in the distance, and they know the sniper's in there, but you have no idea where, and that's just all you.
And then you see the sniper that's near our side pull the trigger, and that's the end. It's just kind of like, yep, you got him, and then they leave. Unceremoniously, just cuts to the next one.
So then, as they're driving, I don't remember how. This car like starts. pulls up behind them and is like really aggressive and flashing their lights and swerving all over the place. And you're like, oh fuck, what's about to happen? And the car pulls up next to him, and it turns out it's like these two Asian guys, they're other reporters that this group already knows. And they're like, holy shit, it's you guys. They're like, hey man, what's up? And like kind of lightening the mood, and they're all having fun, but it's very dangerous because they're going like 60 miles an hour down this road. And eventually Kaylee Spaney, while driving, like jumps out of her window and crawls into the other car, and one of the Asian guys from that car crawls into the main group's car.
In her defense, so, he does it first, and then she's like, oh.
Yeah, he like jumps over, and he's like, oh, this is fun, what's up, guys? And she's like, fuck it, I'll do it too. Yeah. So she jumps into the other car. So then that car speeds off with one of the two Asian guys, and it is significant that they're Asian. And one of the Asian photojournalist buddies and Kaylee Spaney now speed off way ahead, and then we're left back in the other car with the three older veterans and now this new other Asian guy who's like joking it up and having fun. And as they're driving, they realize like they've lost sight of the car that Kaylee Spaney and the other guy were in. And they're like, huh, okay, well, what's going on? So then they like, break the woods that they're in and come over the hill, and they see the car is pulled over with the doors just still wide open. And immediately, like, something happened. Why would they stop and just get out like this? So they stop and get out, and you see kind of up ahead that they're both being, like, huddled forward by these two military-dressed dudes, and, like, they're getting put down on their knees, basically, these two, Kaylee Spaney's character and this other photojournalist guy. And this is probably like a quarter mile, they're really far off in the distance. I actually think they use their cameras to like zoom in and get a clearer image of what's going on. That's how far away they are. They're like way up this road. They're kind of in, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like hilly, woodsy farmland where it'll break out into big open open farmland with like ranch style homes with fences around. Maybe there's cattle and shit. Where are they at this point in the United States?
Yeah, so it's basically...
Where are they even driving from? I don't actually remember.
They are like they're on their way to Charlottesville, so they're like kind of going from New York to D.C., but they have to go through like West Virginia to get there. Okay, so that's, it is basically a farmhouse off of a country road is where they're at.
So this is the Jesse Plemons sequence. So... I can't remember. They're basically debating, like, we can't just sit here and let them die, but also, like, we don't know what the fuck's going on. These guys seem like they're dangerous if they're taking people, like, hostage. But I think, who makes takes the initiative and is like, no, we have to go help them. Like, we can't just drive away.
If I'm not mistaken, it is Lee who says that she is going, her and like Joel together kind of like almost unanimously like, yes, we are going to do something. Joel's the one who takes charge and actually speaks first, so I think it is Joel
because Sammy, the heavier like
he's
veteran,
I smell death.
Really do much. He says he's like, I have a feeling this is death. This is bad. Something bad is going to happen. As if the earlier foreshadowing wasn't enough. Now they're really smacking you in the face with the foreshadowing. But, of course, like, they have their friends. They can't just leave them. So they make the decision to go up and try to defuse it. And they're like,
but Sam stays behind, which is very clear. They do establish that Sam is asked to stay behind because, like, if it goes bad, you're not going to be able to outrun.
They need to, or they need a quick escape with the car if it comes to it or something. So, Sammy stays behind in the car. And the Asian friend journalist and now Lee and Joel all go forward and try to defuse the situation. And you see, as they approach... These guys, these two military dudes, are standing by a mass grave where it looks like just 100 civilian bodies are in there. There's not any guns. There's no tack vests. There's no military personnel. It just literally looks like women and children and men and just in their daily clothes,
like when
all
they're
dead.
Spying on them, they see a dump truck like
drop up and
just dropping civilian bodies is just unflattering. They're just dead bodies rolling off this truck. Without really like sound, you don't understand what the context. It's just really gross. Yeah, so
very disturbing.
Yeah.
So this scene is extremely tense, and it's part of the it's that line that they used in the trailers. What kind of American are you? But Jesse Plemons is just playing this. I mean, he does an unbelievably good job because you have no fucking idea what his intention is but you know it's not good, but you don't know why or how. He's just playing this role. It's such a fucking...
What a subtle
I don't know how to
thing.
describe
I don't know
it.
if
It's
you
like,
notice this is he keeps moving his gun around and like the way he rests his hands on the gun constantly to like make them uneasy of a like he's reaching for it because like he's so unstable.
or like, am I going to use this? What am I doing
Yeah,
here?
it's so
like, what's going on?
It doesn't bring it.
And
so good.
he I want to say he's being antagonistic, but at the same time it's not. It's like
Interrogation.
I don't
He's
know,
just asking questions in a non-threatening tone, but a very like, I need you to answer. Like kind of in the way that the cop is just like, hey, I pulled you over. What's your name? Like that kind of just inquisitive.
Do you know why I pulled you over?
Yeah, that type of that's the energy.
I don't know. There's something more subtle underlining everything he's doing, where like, you know, this guy would shoot you in the face and then like take a bite of his sandwich and not ever.
And I think part of it is you see
that's
him
the vibe you get from this guy.
Behave around all those dead. I think the visuals really add.
Of course,
to
that too.
I think.
Yeah, the mass grave of civilians, and he's just kind of like, yeah, oh, huh, what are you guys doing here?
He's
What's
got,
going
like,
on?
Pink sunglasses on for some reason.
They're
never.
Maybe it's intentional. Rose tinted glasses. I don't know. Oh. And he's asking about what kind of American they are, and it could very well be intentional. I mean, literally everything in movies is intentional. You have to like. If you're a good director like Alex Garland is, you know every single fucking thing, every color, every frame, every whatever is all very intentional. So yeah, he's got these weird rose tinted glasses on, and he's asking what kind of Americans these are, and Joel, who is like clearly Spanish, he's got kind of a Spanish accent, Latino accent. Says like I was born in Florida, you know, I that's where I'm from, blah blah blah, and then he goes to the Asian guy, and he says. This Asian guy, by the way, is like borderline pissing his pants. He's like speechless, stammering. He's like shaking. He's so fucking scared. Oh wait, I think I'm jumping the gun.
So because I'll say because this is what happens. So he does ask Joel first, then he asks Jesse, who's very scared and whimpery, and like where are you from? And she's like not answering. And this Lee steps forward like a very like she doesn't sound scared at all. She's like answer him, and she said, and then so Jesse says Missouri. And, like, you can tell Jesse Plemons' character liked that answer. Oh, the pick-me state. You know, like, do you know why they call it that? Yeah. Kind of like, he seemed to be not upset by that answer. So then he asks, Lee, where are you from? And she mentions this earlier, so this is true. Colorado. And once again, Jesse Plemons' character seems happy with that response. Like, oh, okay. See, like, and then he kind of talks about, like, those are American places. Missouri and Colorado. They kind of set up that he doesn't say Florida, and they mentioned earlier that Florida is part of that alliance with Texas and California. So I think at first he's like eyeballing the not clear white guy here is from Florida. Like, so you already set up there's kind of like racial tension already kind of implied here. Then he asks the Asian guy who has been in the back, like kind of in the background crying. He's like, hey, what about this guy who's been quiet here? And he starts muttering and crying and like, I need you to answer me right now very clearly. And eventually he says, where is he from? He's from Hong Kong.
Boom, gets shot. Although, this is the thing. I thought I was jumping the gun because the original, I think he kills the original Asian driver to start off this tension.
Yeah, but he doesn't. Yeah, so the reason everyone's freaking out is because, yes, the driver of the vehicle who was caught gets killed pretty early.
Yeah, Jesse.
As just like a
in the interrogation, I think as they approach, he basically kills that first Asian
guy. Like
guy.
As he kind of sees,
but I can't remember the sequence. And
so what happens? He's like, "Oh, hey guys," they're trying to explain like we're pressed. He's like, "Oh, where are you going?" And they're trying to hide the fact that they're going to DC because they don't want it to seem political. They're going to Charlottesville, and he kind of makes a joke about, "Oh, I want to go hiking," and like you can tell there's some tension, and like eventually he just kind of shoots the guy in cold blood, kind of to like. All right, here's what we're dealing with. This is now I'm going to start asking you.
So I feel bad that we poorly set up this scenario. We're building the tension, but we skipped the part that made it the most tense. Was the fact that he just he killed this guy out of nowhere. You didn't really see it coming. You didn't think it was going to happen, and he just like turns and kills that dude. That's why his Asian buddy is in the back, like frozen in terror because he just watched his Asian friend his best buddy get killed, and now he probably knows he's next. So yeah. Kills that guy. That's why Kaylee Spaney is now frozen in fear, and Lee has to be like, answer him, because this guy will kill you without a second thought. So like we have to be doing what this dude says. And then the other guy, yeah, Hong Kong, boom, shoots him in the head. Then out of nowhere, Sammy to the rescue comes blasting through and hits Jesse Plemons' character with their car. Like, so at this point, obviously Sammy in the back heard the gunshots. He's probably watching with his camera, seeing like he already killed one guy. Okay, he just killed a second guy. Fuck this, I gotta go save him. So he goes flooring up, smashes into Jesse Plemons, knocks him into the mass grave. Kaylee Spaney like jumps and rolls out of the way into the mass grave as well. And you know, Kaylee Spaney kind of like might have been dazed or unconscious, but she kind of like wakes up and comes to in this mass grave and realizes like, holy shit, I'm just on top of all these dead bodies. And she's like panicking and starts freaking out and like crawls out of the mass grave, gets in the car. Like they're all trying to get in the car. The second military dude who was with Jesse Plemons' character was like in the truck or something. And so like he eventually like gets out of the truck and has his gun and starts shooting at him as they're driving away. Then they make it to the road. They're driving. They're like, holy fucking shit, you know, like kind of freaking out about what happened. Kaylee Spaney just like throws up all over herself.
That throw up scene is so good because it's just like oozes out of her out of nowhere, and like all the sound is cut. You're just kind of it's oh man, the sequence is very good. But
and I believe they did something that I don't know why more movies don't do. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like a lot of throw up comes out of her, like more than that. This drives me fucking crazy in movies when they have a character throw up and they clearly just have a mouthful of like boogers and just go, bleh. It's like, that's not what throw up looks like. That's not how throw up sounds. I fucking hate it. And I can't believe we've been making movies for like 100 years and we haven't figured out a better way to get somebody to fake throw up. It's so infuriating.
This one felt very, because it's also not from being sick.
Because I think what they did was, and I've seen it done in other movies, and hilariously enough, What We Do in the Shadows TV show, the characters throw up pretty often, and they basically like they must have a tube like hooked up to the side of your mouth, and they have a profile shot of just like a jet of vomit coming out, and it's always very funny in the show, but it's effective. Do that in movies, and I think they do that somehow in this movie.
Just with less pressure.
Kind of like, what's that?
With like less,
just with less pressure. Yes, like she throws up on herself, but it's in a way where it's clearly more than just like a spittle of, you know, puke out of her mouth, or I threw up on myself. It's like she's actually kind of looks like she's throwing up on herself, and I don't know why more movies don't do it. Maybe it's like really hard to make it work well, but it's just a tangent that pisses me the fuck off.
Real vomit in 2025 or else.
Yeah, like get on it, guys. It's not hard. So yeah, she's throwing up on herself, and then Sammy, the driver, is like, Lee, you gotta drive. And they're like, no, keep going. And he's like, I can't drive. And then you realize he's been shot. So they have to stop the car, or maybe it just at this point cuts to like they made it to a military base.
So Kyle, this sequence is gorgeous. So what they do is they stop.
You're right.
They get out. They swap drivers. So Sam's in the back with Jesse, but then they start driving through like the Appalachian Mountains, I assume, and it's just the forests are just on fire, just burning down.
Yeah.
And like,
so it's nighttime, but all the forests are on fire. So it's just this, you know, orange everywhere around them. Everything's burning, but they're just driving on this road.
It's so
like
sad.
Very peaceful, but scary and sad. It's
and then after that, they get to the military base. Sam dead from his wounds. Joel gets out of the car and lets out a no sound scream. It looks like it was a very like this is everyone looks defeat, like that moment destroyed them.
Yeah.
Like they were living like kind of in a fantasy where this is a fun game, and now this is not anymore. Like
it's become very real. So yeah, that's what we alluded to earlier. There's one act of heroism, Sammy saving them, and he had to pay for it with his life.
I do. So the base, when they get there, they basically find out that the American forces are invading the capital right now. So they get going, but before we go, there is one particular conversation between Lee and Jesse that they have, that there's this line that I remember her saying, and like she doesn't respond. The scene cuts after her response, but it was now I was trying to buy time as I was trying to recall it, and now it's escaped my brain.
Well, I can tell you there's a particular moment as well.
Oh, I remember it.
A moment I really liked. Just hold on to that, or pull out your notepad or something. A moment that I really liked and made Lee's character look a lot more human was she. So Sammy dies. You don't see them like pull his body out of the car or do anything. It's like they're at this military base. The people are like kind of asking them who, okay, so who's in your party? And they're like, well, we had one, but he died. And then it cuts back to kind of Lee trying to clean the car out, and there's just blood everywhere. And she's like kind of smearing it around and trying to clean it, but you can see it's like not really effective. Whatever towel she's using, it's just spreading the blood everywhere. And then it shows Lee at some point too, like after she's trying to clean the car, she's looking at her camera and there's a picture of Sammy dead in the car. And Lee hits the delete button. She deletes this photo. So it's an interesting contrast to what she said earlier, implying she would take a picture of Kaylee Spaney or Jesse if she died. But now here she is, being an unbiased documenter, taking a picture of one of her close friends that died, and she just can't stomach looking at it. She can't stomach knowing that like that's her friend, and she deletes it. So I don't know, it really, as an audience member, just kind of like, I guess it's just a reminder that like people are human. Like no matter what you do, you can't be unbiased. You can't, it's just that commentary of like you never know who someone is. Like again, soldiers dying in war movies, or it's like, oh, well, that guy's dead. Oh, well, moving on. But it's like, that guy probably had friends. That guy had a family. That guy might have had a partner or some people who loved him. He loved others. Like, it makes you kind of have like an existential crisis. At least it did for me a little bit. Like, man, you just don't know. Like, everyone is everyone to someone. It's crazy the level of connectedness among people in the whole world. But it's like you can isolate these people into just tiny little segments, but I'm kind of rambling. But
I love that you bring this up because I was actually talking to you earlier this month about Dark. That's the exact like kind of thesis of that show, is that like it's a time travel show. They just want to save one person, but that's not how that works, because everybody is connected to everyone. You changing Sarah's like not going to the school anymore, that means she never met this dude who would originally been like cousins. That like everyone's connected in such a deep way. But the thing I remembered is actually backing up the exact kind of like Lee character arc highlight that you have, is she's talking to Jesse, and Jesse more or less said that like, I've never felt more alive now than after this moment. And like,
yeah, I was more scared for my life than I've ever been, but I've never felt more
and
alive.
like kind of seeing in her like the way like I interpreted Lee's like kind of facial reaction was this either recognizing herself that that's not her, or she's like doesn't like that answer, or like knows that like being in that position too, and just like this kind of, I don't know, maybe recognizing the path this girl is on. I don't know if it's good or bad, and this is where my like struggle that stopped.
I think
go ahead.
She's just kind of facing the toll that this sort of thing has on you.
And I guess that lines up to like what is then the final act of the movie, where the amount of stuff I want to talk about is not as long, because this is much more the spectacle, looking at American like military vehicles blowing up the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument is like this really like bizarre feeling looking thing, is so interesting and cool. I just really want to highlight that it's so weird to see like the military blowing it up against other military. I don't know. I didn't know if you had anything in particular you want to talk about in the like the battle sequence other than what happens with Lee, which I do want to highlight.
Right. Well, we're cutting it here for time. So basically, after this military base, they're all kind of a bunch of character development, basically, is what I'll just say that to shorthand it. They end up driving and getting to their destination. They're at DC, and this is where like the heart of the war zone is. There's a kind of a battle happening.
This is a current siege to take out the president.
Yes, this is the final siege to take out the president. Lee is starting to have like very serious PTSD attacks, and she's like almost incapacitated and like just kind of can't move and can't perform, and Joel is having to like pull her around and wake her up and like, hey, come on.
In
like,
the exact
focus.
way that Joel was doing to Jesse in the first battle of like more or less a dog collar of like you're on my leash, I'm pulling you, you were following.
Yeah, grabbing them by their like tactical vest.
Yeah, so they've now making her move. It's just very interesting.
Yeah, correct. They have flipped in the fact that Jessie is like, she's being aggressive. She's taking really dangerous positions to try to get good photos. She's right next to soldiers that are shooting when she shouldn't be. She should be further back, and like she's really starting to risk her life now to get these glamorous shots that probably Lee used to do, and now she is in this completely panicked state and like can't even hardly perform. So eventually, militaries, they're fighting. They think that they have seen like the convoy of the president come out of the building, so the military kind of divert and go over there, and Lee is waking up, and she's like, no, that's not, the president's not going to be in that convoy. Like, that was a decoy. Come on, let's go. So like while the military is kind of distracted, they sneak into the White House basically. I know it sounds ridiculous, but when you watch the movie, it makes a lot of sense.
Yes, it was 100% like, yeah, this is how it was.
It's set up well. Yeah. So they kind of like sneak in with there's a couple military personnel.
It's like one squad, kind of like the SEAL Team 6 or whatever. That's kind of like the parallel in my brain is like this squad of like 8 military dudes trying to penetrate this building and find if he's in there.
Yeah. So Lee is not the only person with this idea. The military have that idea too, but the bulk of what the fighting and what's happening is distracted outside with what they think is a convoy with the president, but it's not. So they all make it into the White House, and again, Jessie, Kaylee Spaney's character, is continuing to put herself into escalatingly dangerous situations to get good pictures, and Lee is recognizing this. And at one point, it's kind of this whole shot slows down where this is basically the final hallway of them pushing to get to the president. And Kaylee, in kind of slow motion, just literally like runs out into the dead center of the hallway and like plants her feet and is trying to get this photo of just the center of all the action.
It's like of the
but
Oval
in all
Office,
the doorways, it's of the Oval Office being sieged. But in the hallways in front of them, there's like 5 or 6 dudes peeking around corners shooting. So like Jessie's probably going to get shot right here. So it's in slow-mo, and as she's kind of planting herself to take this photo, Lee, Kirsten Dunst's character, realizes what's happening and like jumps out of the doorway, pushes Kaylee aside, and then boom, gets shot in the back or something. You don't really see it, but it's like they show it from Kaylee Spaney's point of view, where she's on the ground looking up, and Kirsten Dunst like gets hit in the back and is like falling forward towards Kaylee Spaney on the ground. So then, I think, I mean, you can talk about this if you want to talk about this.
I do, because
I'm setting up the action, so you go.
So what I think is really interesting in this movie, no one gets final words. You don't hear, and like what was so interesting is that like there's just this like kind of deadpan face, and like as Lee falls to the ground, like Jessie kind of has this like blank look on her, and she takes multiple photos as she dies, like has the like.
Yeah, I forgot. As she's like, she got pushed on her back, realizes like, she gets pushed over. Lee kind of is standing there for about 1 second before then she gets shot. And while Jessie is gets pushed over on the ground, turns over, sees Lee is the one who pushed her, like pulls up her camera, takes photos of her like as she's dying and getting shot. Yeah, and then she stands up, and it just has a kind of a very cold, emotionless expression looking at Lee, like. This girl just saved your life, but she kind of has no feelings of it.
And like that,
she's fully turned into photojournalist.
And like that was something is like, I understand what happened here. I don't know, and I don't think this is my only real gripe. Is like I don't know that the film did a good job of expressing to me. Like I don't know what to interpret or what other things I can see to like. I just don't understand what what the character is going through, where their head's at. Because to me, there's like.
It happened too fast.
What do you mean? I'm sorry. I don't know what you mean.
Like Kaylee went from being emotional and responding to situations in a human way to suddenly being this like cold
I was kind of
basically within the span of 10 minutes.
The reason I said there's only one act of heroism was that like I felt like Kaylee just like did something that like no person, she wouldn't have made that, but like that was like Why was she so high on? Maybe it was because she was so high on the like drug of like I'm going to get the photo of them fucking invading the Oval Office to kill the president. The military's made it clear to these journalists they are not capturing the president. They are shooting him.
Yeah, they're coming in to kill them. They've mentioned that multiple times that like this is not a surrender situation. Like we're going in.
So that was where like it was starting to lose me a little bit. I was like I didn't feel as connected in to these characters in their last chapter, which was kind of a bummer. But I love the way the movie does finally end. But I'll let you have your.
There is something I noticed. There was, I believe it was when Sammy died. There was a shot. How do I explain this? So this is when Lee is like kind of by herself, kind of trying to clean out the car. She's processing Sammy's death. It almost seems like she's starting to have a PTSD attack. And the way it's demonstrated is the camera kind of cuts to a sort of first-person view. You're basically seeing what Lee would be seeing in the situation. But there's this very slight fisheye discoloration to the camera. And it's implied to me, I interpreted this, I think it happens twice in the movie. 3 times total, but twice to Lee specifically, where it's basically you're seeing what she's seeing, and it's a fisheye color distortion, and she kind of is hesitating in this moment. And I believe it's supposed to be representing some kind of PTSD attack or trauma or stress. Something's happening to her. The change at the end of the movie is that when Jessie, Kaylee Spaney, is taking pictures, she's now in the Oval Office. Lee has died. She's in this like in the Oval Office taking pictures. The same lens distortion starts to happen to her. And it's, I don't know if you noticed it.
Okay, I see. So this is her moment in the same way? But
yeah, where it's like she's doing her job, she's trying to be this thing, but it's not, it's like it is taking a mental toll on her in the same way that it was taking a toll on Lee.
So my big problem at the end of the day, though, is like I don't know what the director is saying then. That like photojournalists need to be hardened, that they shouldn't be, that like what is it that is the message of making Lee die to save this young generation? Is that that photojournalism is so important you should be protecting the generations with your life? Is that what it's supposed to represent? Like I feel like I don't know what he is trying to say, because I understand the character motivation and like that kind of angle, but I just don't know what it means.
Yeah, no, I think it's
Was it just that like she recognized that it's worth dying for? Like this is worth dying for? Like I don't know. Like I don't think I understood Lee's headspace enough in that moment to be able to reckon that in my own internal.
It's just the cycle of life, or the cycle of taking on a position like this, is that you need to become hardened. Parts of you need to die in order for you to be able to do this job. But in the end, it might be cliche or cheesy, but like we're all still human. We all still make connections. We all still care no matter what you do. So Kirsten Dunst went through a big portion of her life being this hardened photojournalist. And in the end, she sees this young version of herself that she wants to mentor and take care of. At first, she's very resistant to it, and I think it's almost a denial. Like she probably knows this girl's a lot like her and doesn't want to see this girl go through these same things she did. But in the end, you can't stop that, and Jessie becomes the same thing that Lee was, and in the end, Lee kind of becomes human again, if you will, and decides that like it's worth saving. Maybe it is worth intervening.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Holy shit. That's what it is. It was her taking...
I just realized it as I was
saying. What the fuck?
Yeah. She could have let Kaylee die and taken a great picture, but she
stopped. Yeah. Oh
for the first
my
time,
god, dude. I don't know how that like took me a minute to even recognize this. Like, she switched. Like the idea is you never intervene. You're just a ghost spectating. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes that like crystallize a little bit better. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but it certainly makes sense at least.
I think they did an amazing job with Lee as a character, the arc. Like I said, I still stand by that Jesse kind of became this hardened photojournalist a little too quick, because the reality is this whole thing probably took a week of their time. And
I feel like this is like,
Kaylee, in just the previous situation, she was like crying and panicking and throwing up on herself because she barely survived a situation. And now the next time they're in the Oval Office, she's like this hardened badass who just has no feeling anymore. It was just a little too fast.
And so the last like 2 minutes of the movie is them dragging the president of the United States from like behind his desk, and he's trying to claw, and he's panicking, and Joel gets to ask him the question. He's like, is there anything you want to say?
He's like, wait, guys, before you kill him.
Yeah. He's like, is there anything you want to say? And the president's his response is, don't let them kill me. And Joel says, that'll do. And then the movie kind of like slows down to like the camera mode, and music plays, and they kill the president, and they all slowly kind of look at Kaylee, and then the movie kind of ends with her taking the photo, what is like her waiting for that perfect shot of everyone, these military dressed dudes over the dead president of the United States. And and like the movie's not interested in like, well, what does the world look like? Was this the good ending or the bad ending? Like, I have no clue.
Yeah, you really don't know. And you don't know what happens afterwards. You don't know. You just don't know. I will say that the president hiding under his desk is kind of hilarious. Like, in what world do they not have a secret panic room for him? Like, come on, let's be real. There's a panic room for the president. There's underground bunkers. There's something. There's like a better place he could have been.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue
but it's not cinematic. So
and
whatever.
like, there's argument that they try to set up that he negotiated a surrender, and like the idea is like, I don't know, maybe the Secret Service had to get him in there.
Okay,
I don't know, something like that.
Yeah,
but
I guess well, no, if he negotiated a surrender, then they wouldn't have sent this like decoy convoy out to be shot and blown up by tanks and shit. So
you're right.
It was just a little silly for him to be literally in his Oval Office hiding under the desk. Yeah, but I guess it made for the ending we wanted.
So that is the movie in its entirety. I thought it was really great. If I have to order, I will now order Alex Garland's filmography, worst to best, or yes, and worst is Men by virtue of me not seeing it. Then it's Devs, because I feel like
that show got away from itself.
I feel like you could cut some ideas or some things and make it really tight. That'd be great. Then it's Civil War. It might be Annihilation, then Civil. No. It's Civil War, and then Annihilation, then Ex Machina clearly is the number one for me still.
100%,
but
yeah, I agree. And I have seen all of them plus Men, and Men is still the worst. It's just a little. It's pretty surreal and a little ham-fisted, and
I'm a turkey guy.
It's good,
myself.
but just like not great.
You missed my sick joke, and I'm never repeating it to you ever again.
That's good. Then we'll let it.
Okay,
we'll let it die. He did though. Alex Garland says he's going back to writing. He doesn't want to direct anymore, so I think he's done with after Civil War. He already has written though 28 Years Later, which showed a teaser, and it's directed by Danny Boyle, and they were the original duo. I don't know if you know.
I actually
wrote
only
28 Days Later.
I found out after watching Civil War that he wrote 28 Days Later. The other thing I need to share with you before we wrap podcast is do you know in Across the Spider-Verse, you've seen that one, right?
Yeah.
Penny Parker, the robot Spider-Man girl thing?
Yeah.
Do you know what person wrote that character into existence, who created that character?
Was it Alex Garland?
It was. No, it's My Chemical Romance's own Gerard. But Gerard Way is the creator of that character. That storyline and like character was created by him, not for that movie, but for, like in comics. I had no idea he created that character.
Wow, weird. Okay.
And the name of SP//DR is the name of the robot, and that is an Evangelion reference because that's what he was inspired by to like how she's like. Whoa. Yeah, I just thought that was the coolest random shit. Very important.
So nothing to do with Alex Garland.
Oh, absolutely not. No. It's just a fun fact I had to share with you, and now I've immortalized it on podcasts. So
very swag. Thank you for that. All right. So next week, despite what you guys may think, we are not exclusively a film review podcast. We're a nerd shit podcast. We just have taken the easy route of doing film reviews because it's the good way to start. Next week, though, we got a little special treat for all our listeners at home. We're going to do top 5 favorite Magic the Gathering mechanics. My top 5 favorite mechanics and Taylor's top 5 favorite mechanics, and we're just going to go over them and talk about them. It's going to be a little off our normal shit, of course.
I think it'll be a better...
We love Magic the Gathering, so...
We will be much more able to talk shit and be our normal selves instead of trying to analytically discuss a thing as much as talking. Yes, so I think it'll be a more fun episode for everybody, realistically, because we get to be a little less... a little more silly.
It's pretty much only my friends listening, and they all know who I am anyway.
Well, they don't know who I am. Fuck you, Ian
they do.
from Iowa.
There it is. Yeah, let's see if he...
I don't know your last name, Ian. I'm sorry, but fuck you anyway.
Braun, which is ironic because he has none. He's all brains.
What an idiot.
Yeah. All right.
That's it. All right. Till next week, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.